Vehicle enthusiasts, and particularly their reputation in the outdoors, is not a positive one. You don't need a built rig to just be outside here. And so sometimes I can't help but feeling that overlanding is the most inferior outdoor hobby. This is a road that people use to access their other normal activities like hunting, fishing, climbing, hiking. If overlanding is about this journey, something that sits in between rock crawling and car camping, do we really want the middle, the mediocre part that everybody's already doing? This is anything that someone in a Subaru can go looking for. This isn't something that only a lifted Toyota pickup could do. Oh, that's not a hot spring. Overlanding's cool for finding artifacts and things off the beaten path. And I feel like that's why overlanders a lot of times, when they get into these accessory things, especially like visiting old mines, visiting fire towers, visiting all these artifacts, I think really adds to overlanding. Those tendencies are kind of proof that overlanding doesn't stand on its own necessarily. Car camping for the sake of car camping, that's really what overlanding is. Doesn't it feel like there could be more to this hobby? Anybody else make it so that their truck's pointing out? To me, it's like you get this whole "don't come into my campsite" kind of message going. Any car could get to the vast majority of these campsites, but I did have to go through a creek crossing, so you should probably have, what, 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, a lead foot to get to this campsite. Maybe daunting if you're brand new to the woods. Overlanding is kind of that hobby. It's a way to get outside for people who know how cars work but don't know how the woods work. I can relate to that as someone who only kind of grew up camping and fishing and didn't grow up, constantly outdoors. I get it. There's a lot of foundational skills that overlanding does teach people. Is it all you ever want to do? Is the very basic skills that everybody else has to use to do their outdoor hobbies. Say, for example, your hobby is fishing. You'd already be out here doing the same exact thing that I'm doing. You just wouldn't call it overlanding. You're fishy, fishy, fishy. One of the great things about overlanding is it does give you an opportunity to pick up other people's trash. No trasharoo required. You have to know that overlanders are lying to themselves a little bit about the whole disconnection thing. After all, things like this are some of the top selling products in the overland niche. So here we are, plugging in and charging our electronics because we can't actually disconnect. We need internet clout. Now, perhaps for you, overlanding is really just about drinking beer in cool places. If that's your deal, by all means, go for it. And while you're at it, make sure you only drink local hazy IPAs. If you don't, you might be a redneck or a side-by-side driver. One of the real reasons that dudes love going overlanding is because they love wieners. Don't even get me started on people who overland with less clothes on. The best way to cook a wiener is to be real lazy about it and just set a rock on the handle. And now at this point, you're probably confused why I don't have a scuttle, why I'm not, cast iron cooking steaks. It's because I'm probably not a real overlander. I haven't learned all those skills yet. All the packing, the planning, picking which road I'm gonna drive on, let alone which cooking equipment I'm gonna bring. Figuring out all that's really complicated. Excuse me, sir, can you fit 35s with no lift? One of the weird things about overlanding is that it makes car camping look extremely cost prohibitive. Rooftop tents are thousands of dollars. Some of these vehicles are 40, 50, 60, 70, 80,000. Just the base price before any mods. People are putting on 33s, 35s, 37s. Compared to a bone stock rig, all-terrain tires, sleeping in the bed of the truck, eating jalapeno bratwurst. The overlanding industry wants you to think that car camping takes specific modifications, money, specific skill set, when in all reality, it's like the least complicated activity you can do in the outdoors. It involves driving a car like you normally would, falling asleep, making a fire. There's not a lot to it. Yeah, like learn to air down your tires or buy some recovery gear if you want. Most of the time it's just people out here camping. Take your paid off vehicle, whatever it is, your Subaru, your Toyota, your Honda, maybe your Chevy or your Ford if you're feeling really confident. Just go outside, camp, fall asleep. One of the most tragic scenes you'll see when people hop on forums or Facebook groups or they message you on Instagram and they're like, hey, I want to get into overlanding. I want to get into camping and off-roading and wheeling. And like, what gear do I need? That's a failure on like the industry and the people who overland and car camp and off-road and wheel. Because the correct answer will always be, whatever you have, go take it, go do what you think you want to do and see how that goes. Like, there's no other answer. You need to start with what you have, figure out if you like the hobby, then drop some coin on the things that you know you want. If you want to get into this hobby, just go do it. Start where you can. So what size are these bad boys? 40s? 45s? Do they make KO2s in this size? Aren't you a little concerned you're going to be snapping axle shafts? Geez, yeah, no, manual hubs. Not really familiar with those. How do they work? Yeah, you're missing a couple lug. Huh. Yeah, I only buy Nittos. Now, I suppose there is something pure about overlanding as a hobby. It really only asks the question, what's out there? What is there to explore, to see, to learn about? A question that people who are out here and have other hobbies may not always be asking themselves. I don't want to rail on other outdoor hobbies. It could be in some senses a very low impact hobby, something that really doesn't take much from public land, but at the same time, I feel like overlanders and off-road enthusiasts have one of the worst reps for how they treat natural resources. Take, for example, the recent salt tram incident. That's terrible, and that's four-wheel drive, overland, some kind of off-road vehicle travel enthusiast, most likely, right? You know, it could have been a car camper or just someone in the national park, but vehicle enthusiasts, and particularly their reputation in the outdoors, is not a positive one. It seems like there are more bad actors than there probably are. There are a lot of nice overlanders, leave no trace type of people. In other ways, four-wheel drive travel is one of the most intrusive forms of travel. It's the largest object that you're allowed to use as transportation, like outside at all in general. Hikers, bikers, kayakers, all kinds of other transportation, even quads are going to be lower impact. They're simply less invasive forms of travel. They require smaller tracks and leave smaller footprints. And so sometimes I can't help but feeling that overlanding is the most inferior outdoor hobby. Its travel is the most restricted. It's the least prioritized. Certainly there are more motorcycle, there are more bike, there are more hiking trails around me than there are places I can drive my truck. It also seems to give a lesser value to the hobby of four-wheel driving. Unless you're in a place like Moab, for the most part, it's Forest Service roads and a few off-road trails for most of public land. It varies some in the West because Utah and California and some of these OHV areas do give a lot of access to this kind of travel. But in general, looking at your national forest type designations, there's not going to be a lot of off-road trails for full-size vehicles. It's mostly just Forest Service roads. And if you want to get to something of interest, you're usually hiking. That's the de facto way to traverse these areas. I don't see organizations like the National Forest or the BLM continuing to prioritize vehicle travel. It seems that wherever we're at right now, with vehicle travel, that's where we're going to be stuck at. It doesn't look like we're getting more roads, more access. Things like hiking and backpacking are probably the truest and purest ways to see most of this landscape. Long before the automobile, that's how people were doing it. They were walking, and if they could do it that way, so can we for the most part. But I get that for people who can't spend 3 days backpacking in the woods, that driving your vehicle over mountain passes like this helps capture some of the wonder that these places hold. My biggest problem with the idea of overlanding is the idea that you need these expensive vehicles, all these parts bolted onto your vehicle, all this specialized equipment to do something that people have been doing long before we had modern vehicles. People have been camping, they've been backpacking, they've been car camping, they've been snowmobiling, they've been quadding forever. Even if you're a city person, you don't need a built rig to just be outside here. Whether I have my Tundra, a brand new Jeep, or a 1994 Honda Civic, I would have been able to get to the top of this mountain pass just the same. It's a graded road, the snow is melted, like there's nothing special about this. This is truly a road, and this is as far as you're gonna get a vehicle out here. There's no off-road trails. If you wanna go camping, hiking, backpacking, a four-wheel drive vehicle is nice, but overlanding seems to have pointed people at extreme solutions for a normal excursion. And there are nice things. You know, you want to get a four-wheel camper set up, you want to get a go-fast camper. I get it. I want those things. Those would be dope. But you don't need lifts, tires, wheels. There is a portion of overlanding people who are trying to see how great of camping can I do while rock crawling? And that's kind of their deal. And that's a badass hobby. Like, that is really impressive. But I feel like 50, 60, 70% of the people I meet and come across really just like spending time outside, and they're not getting a whole lot out of wheeling their rig. You know, they're not constantly bashing it on obstacles. You can just go drive, just make a plan, take a map, go find a campsite. You will always be surprised how far you can get, how far into the mountains you can get with so little capability. Stock vehicles are awesome, they're reliable. Go try that out if you're new to overlanding. Now, I don't want to make it sound like I hate overlanding or I just can't stand it. I think it's got its own time and its own place. After all, there are plenty of places where having that extra equipment really comes in handy.
Hey, thank you for choosing Starbucks. How's it going today?